In this video, I'm going to show you how to learn anything you want with books, using a method I discovered recently that completely changed how I approach self-education. So, after dropping out of university when I was 19, I became super obsessed with learning all the things I never got to learn in school. And books quickly became my favorite way to learn. But honestly, my approach to learning with books was chaotic. I just go to the bookstore, wander around, and pick out any random book that looked even remotely interesting and that aligned with my learning goals. Sometimes this worked, but most of the time, it wouldn't. I'd just pick up a book. Like one time I picked up a Nietzsche book to get into philosophy, only to realize I had no idea what any of it meant because it was way too advanced and full of jargon for me at my current complete beginner level. And that happened across basically every subject I tried to learn, like psychology, history, politics, whatever. And this just led to a bookshelf full of books I still haven't read to this day. Eventually, I realized if I actually wanted to, achieve my learning goals, I needed structure in my life instead of just randomly choosing whatever book sounded remotely interesting at bookstore. And that's when I came across the concept of a reading map, a self-made curriculum that's just a list of books designed to help you achieve a specific educational goal. So I created a reading map to learn psychology and one to learn philosophy. And yes, I went a little bit extra on some of the design, but now instead of wasting time and money on random books that was not helping me learn, I was now intentionally choosing and vetting books where each one actually made sense to me and built off the last. And this has made learning and reading so much more enjoyable. So yeah, in this video, I want to go over the 5 steps I follow to create my own personalized reading map so you can build your own and actually learn whatever you want to learn, but in an ordered way. All right, so before you can actually start building out your reading map, you first need to figure out what you want to learn. This learning goal will become your North Star, which will be the thing that guides your book choices and keeps you focused. So to do this, you have to ask yourself 2 questions. What do you want to learn and how deeply do you want to learn it? Now, this is going to be highly dependent on your own curiosity and your own goals. So your topic can be as broad as you want, like learning sociology, or super niche, like learning about ancient medical practices. There's no right or wrong answer, it's completely personal. You can also define your goal by type of reading. So, for example, you may want to read every book by a certain author or read a specific type of book that was written during a specific era. Now, I'm sure some of you will struggle with one of the 2 problems I also struggled with, which is either not knowing what you want to learn or having too many things you want to learn. So my recommendation for the first problem, if you have no idea what you want to learn, is to prioritize diving into a shit ton of different subjects and topics to figure out what you like and what you don't. So you need to, first of all, stop using YouTube for entertainment and start finding channels that are meant to educate you on different subjects or topics. Crash Course, for example, is a really great option for learning about all sorts of different topics. Eventually, with enough effort and exploration, you'll find something that pulls you in more than other stuff you read or watched, and that's the stuff you want to dial down on and create a future reading map around. On the other hand, if you have too many interests, which was my problem where I have like 5 bazillion things I want to learn, you want to start by brain dumping all of your curiosities onto a page and then circle the top 2 to 3 that align with who you want to become or what your current goals are right now. Focus on those and you can always come back to the rest later. As an example, I chose to focus on brain and behavior because it supports my study habits and self-education goals. And honestly, I'm just fascinated by the brain more so than all of my other interests. I also picked philosophy because I want to become a better thinker and writer, and that aligns with my identity goals. All the other topics like politics and history and economics can be put on the back burner, and I can come back to those topics later when they're more relevant. Anyway, once you've chosen your focus, you then want to decide how deeply you want to actually learn, because that will shape how long your reading map will be. As a general rule of thumb, for foundational knowledge, you want to aim for between 5 to 10 books. If you want to become a mini expert, I'd go for between 10 to 30. And if you're aiming for mastery, I would go for around 30 to 50 books. Of course, these numbers aren't rigid rules. They are just ballpark estimates to help you gauge the size of your reading map. And finally, once you know which topic or subject you want to target, break it down into subtopics. This will help you build depth in key areas and give your brain space to actually connect and retain ideas before moving on. In my brain and behavior reading map, I created categories like perception, memory, and language, then selected 3 to 5 books under each. That way, I'm not just learning randomly, I'm becoming well-read in each area before moving on to the next. Anyway, now that you know what you want to learn, it's time to actually find books that will help you hit your goal. This is a messy phase where you gather potential books and start piecing together your first draft of your reading map. Now, don't think too hard about the books you're adding. It's okay for your list to be imperfect. You're literally just vomiting out anything that might be interesting and help you progress toward your goal. So, when you start considering the books you want to add to your reading map, there's a couple different types you should keep in mind. Each serves a different purpose depending on how deep you want to go and how you like to learn. So the first type is introductory books. Think Oxford Very Short Introductions or MIT Essential Knowledge series. These are short, accessible books that give you a solid overview of a topic. The next type are secondary sources. These are books where scholars or researchers explain, analyze, or build on original ideas from other works. They're super helpful if you want a big picture understanding without having to decode super dense texts. They're also perfect for connecting dots across different thinkers or time periods. Up next, we have primary sources. So these are the original first-hand works written by the actual thinkers, scientists, philosophers, whatever, who actually developed specific ideas. Think Plato's Republic, Darwin's On the Origin of Species, or Freud's Interpretation of Dreams. They are often harder to read, but super valuable if you really want to understand a subject deeply or develop your own interpretation of it. Next up are classics. So these are works that have stood the test of time and have shaped entire fields and are still relevant today. They often provide crucial historical context, reveal how ideas have evolved, and will also challenge you to think in new ways. And lastly, we have lighter reads. Think stuff like memoirs, narrative nonfiction, or even just fiction that dives into your topic. These types of books are not just for entertainment. They can be super valuable for offering emotional depth, real-world context, and stories that can help concepts actually stick. Plus, they are super great for pacing. In my brain and behavior reading map, I added a bunch of pop science and psychology-based self-help books. Not only did they give my brain a break after heavier material, but they also kept me engaged and excited to keep reading. What you include, though, will depend on your topic, your preferences, and your goal, but keeping this variety in mind can help you build a more well-rounded reading map. And this now brings us to the next question. Where do you even find the right books in the first place? Well, There's a bunch of different places you can look for direction. Google is an obvious choice where you can search up best books to learn X. Wikipedia is another choice where you can check out the bibliography section at the bottom of a relevant page. There's also the introductory books like the Oxford or MIT ones where you can look at the suggested reading sections at the back of the books. MIT and Yale OpenCourseWare also have online syllabuses where you can check for reading assignments and use those as inspiration. Additionally, you can use ChatGPT for recommendations by level and topic. My only problem with ChatGPT is it tends to just give you the most popular choices, which aren't always the best, just the most read. And then you have websites like Reddit, Quora, and YouTube, where you can find curated lists by people who have already read into your desired topic and have a pretty good idea of what the best books are. Just remember, the goal isn't to obsess over creating the perfect list, it's to gather a strong starting point to give you direction. The next step will be to vigorously vet the books you chose, which is what we will move on to now. So now that you have a solid idea of book ideas, it's time to clean that list up and structure it into an actual reading map. And this involves 2 steps. The first is screening the books to make sure they're actually worth your time. And the second step is organizing your final list into a logical learning path. So the first step can take quite a bit of effort, but it is completely worth it. So you want to take each book you added to your list and ask yourself a series of questions. Is this book beginner friendly or filled with jargon? Is it outdated or biased? Is the author reputable? Does it actually cover what I think it does? And is it engaging or is it dry as hell? To answer these questions, Goodreads is your best friend. You can read summaries, check reviews, and see what people liked or did not like about each book. So this process will help you weed out the fluff and avoid wasting time on books that aren't a good fit for you or your learning style. For the second step, once you've trimmed your list down, you want to start organizing the books in a way that makes sense to you. There are 2 kind of basic ways you could organize your list. So you can organize by difficulty, where you start with easier, broader books and move into more complex or narrow ones as you progress, or you can order them chronologically, which can work really great for subjects like history, philosophy, or literature. This step essentially turns your pile of books into an actual map that you can follow and tweak as you go. Which brings us to the next step. Now that your reading map is complete, it's time to actually start the fun part: finding the books and reading them. And here's the thing. You don't have to break the bank to get the books on your reading map. There's actually tons of ways to get books super cheap or completely for free. And here's how. The first way is by using your local library. Yes, libraries still exist, for now, at least in America, and it's super easy to get a library card where you can then use the Libby app to get access to ebooks and audiobooks. Thrift stores and used bookstores are also an option. I've found tons and tons of books on my reading list at estate sales and thrift stores for just a couple dollars per book. The other way is buying used books online. Amazon usually has a used book section for most books, and there's also websites like Thrift Books or Better World Books to find used books. Google also works, where you can literally just search up book title followed by PDF. This usually works, not always, but it is a great option if you don't mind reading digitally and in a kind of shitty format. Now, there's not too much to say about actually reading the books because this isn't a video on how to read well, so I just want to say this. The purpose of your reading map is to guide your own education, but a guide is only so helpful so long as it doesn't become a prison. So if you start a book and it's boring as all holy hell, or way too dense for where you're at, or just not resonating with you, then don't feel guilty about putting it down or abandoning it altogether. You can always come back to it later or replace it with something more appropriate for your level or interest. Always give your curiosity veto power over the books you chose, And just let your curiosity guide you. The goal isn't to grind through your reading map, it is to build a sustainable learning habit that actually excites you, which now brings us to the last step. So while reading a bunch of books is great and all, if you don't actually engage with them, you'll find yourself finishing your reading map and barely remembering anything you've read, which makes the reading map kind of pointless when the entire point was to learn the thing you wanted to learn, which is why the final step is interact with your books. What I mean by that is don't just passively read. Actually think about what you're reading. You want to reflect on your books, chew on the main ideas, and relate the material to your life. And there's actually one super easy way to do this. Write a book review for literally every single book you read on your reading map. And you can go as deep or as short as you want. As to what you can write, here's a couple ideas. A short summary in your own words, what you learned or what stood out, what confused you or what questions you still have, how it connects to other things you've read, what you agreed or disagreed with, and whether you'd recommend it and to whom. This practice of writing book reviews does a few really important things. The first is it strengthens your memory because you're more likely to remember something you've had to explain in your own words. The second is it shows the gaps in your knowledge, which is super valuable so you can go back and review the sections you don't know that well to deepen your understanding. And the third is it helps you form your own opinion, not just on the book, but the book's contents. And the last thing is it makes you a better thinker and communicator, which is basically the entire point of self-education. And the great thing about writing book reviews is the more you do it, the more intentional your reading becomes. You'll start taking better notes, underlining key ideas, and really thinking about the things as you read because you know you'll be writing about it later. So basically, it transforms your reading map from a checklist into an actual learning system, one where every book builds on the last and every review helps solidify what you're learning. And that's how you can learn whatever you want with books. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comments what you're interested in creating a reading map around. I'd love to know. But otherwise, don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.